I still remember the exact moment my world shattered. It was a Thursday morning in March, unseasonably cold for Montana, when I sat in that sterile bank office watching the manager's face drain of color. Cassidy Brennan, 20 years my junior and usually so composed, kept refreshing her computer screen like she didn't believe what she was seeing. My retirement account, 41 years of careful saving, of working double shifts and skipping vacations, showed a balance of $82.19. Just last month, it had held $253,000. My hands started shaking so violently that I had to clasp them together in my lap. I was 76 years old, sitting in that cold leather chair, trying to understand how a lifetime of sacrifice had vanished into thin air. Cassidy was talking, her voice seeming to come from underwater, something about multiple wire transfers over the past 7 weeks. Large withdrawals, all authorized with my account information and security codes. My throat felt like I'd swallowed broken glass. I managed to whisper the only question that mattered: where did it go? Cassidy's eyes filled with pity as she turned the monitor toward me, and I saw the name on the receiving account. Trina Holloway. My live-in caretaker. The woman I'd hired 9 months ago when my arthritis got so bad I couldn't manage the stairs anymore, when cooking dinner became an ordeal that left me exhausted and aching. The woman who'd been sleeping in my guest room, eating at my table, and holding my hand through painful nights when my joints screamed with inflammation. The room started spinning, and I gripped the edge of Cassidy's desk. She was already on the phone, her voice sharp and professional as she spoke to someone about fraud investigation and unauthorized access. But I barely heard her over the roaring in my ears. My mind was replaying every moment: Trina bringing me morning tea, Trina helping me with online banking because it's so confusing at our age, Trina taking such sweet interest in my late husband's pension and my nursing career savings. I'd found Trina through an agency that specialized in elder care. She'd arrived with glowing references, a warm smile, and stories about caring for her own grandmother until she passed. She knew exactly what to say, exactly how to make a lonely widow feel seen and valued again. Within weeks, she wasn't just my caretaker, she was my companion, my friend, the daughter I'd never had. I'd trusted her with my medications, my meals, my home. And apparently, with access to everything that mattered. Now I knew exactly what kind of fool I'd been. Cassidy was printing out transaction records, each page showing another piece of my life stolen away. The money I'd saved for my grandchildren's education, gone. My emergency fund for medical expenses, vanished. Everything I'd built working nights at St. Margaret's Hospital for 4 decades, drained into Trina's accounts like I meant nothing. But as I sat there, something cold and sharp crystallized inside my chest. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Speech balloon: have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely? Share your story below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to see how this grandmother gets her revenge. Backhand index pointing down. I drove home in silence, Cassidy's folder of bank statements burning on the passenger seat beside me. The police had been contacted, but the detective I'd spoken to had been brutally honest: elder financial abuse cases took months, sometimes years to prosecute. Recovery was rare, especially when the perpetrator had legitimate access to the victim's home and could claim the money was a gift. My hands trembled on the steering wheel as I pulled into my driveway. Trina's modest Honda, purchased, I now realized, with my money, sat in its usual spot. The house smelled like cinnamon when I entered. Trina was baking, of course, keeping up the performance even now. I could hear her humming in the kitchen, that cheerful tune she always sang while she worked. My stomach churned with rage and nausea. I stood in my own foyer, clutching my purse, trying to decide what to do next. Every instinct screamed at me to confront her, to demand answers, to throw her out immediately. But something deeper, some survival instinct honed over 7 decades of life, told me to wait. I walked into the kitchen with my best smile plastered on. Trina looked up from the counter where she was rolling dough, her face brightening with that fake warmth I'd once believed was real. "There you are." I was getting worried. "How was your appointment?" She wiped flour from her hands and moved toward me, concern etched across her features. I let her hug me, let her help me to my chair, let her bring me water and fuss over whether I'd eaten lunch. Every touch made my skin crawl. "Just a routine checkup," I lied smoothly, surprised at how calm my voice sounded. "Everything's fine. The doctor says I'm healthy as a horse." Trina beamed at me, squeezing my shoulder affectionately. She launched into a story about the farmer's market she'd visited that morning, about the fresh vegetables she'd bought for dinner. I nodded along, watching her perform, studying her the way a scientist studies a specimen. How had I missed it? The slight calculation in her eyes, the way her smile never quite reached them? Over the next 3 days, I played the perfect victim. I let Trina help me with everything, praised her cooking, thanked her for her kindness. But when she wasn't looking, I was working. I set up my grandson Jareth's old laptop in my bedroom, the one Trina didn't know about. Late at night, while she slept in the guest room, I combed through my email archives, my computer history, every digital footprint I could find. I discovered she'd installed keylogging software on my main computer months ago. That's when I realized something crucial. If Trina had been this thorough, this calculated, I wasn't her first victim. People didn't develop this level of sophisticated fraud overnight. I started searching: elder abuse cases, caretaker theft, financial exploitation. And then I found it, a news article from 2 years ago in Idaho. An elderly widower named Oswin Davies had died suddenly, his estate mysteriously depleted. His daughter had suspected the live-in caretaker, a woman named Trina Holloway, but couldn't prove anything. The case had gone cold. I stared at Trina's smiling face in the article photo, and my blood turned to ice. What would you do if you discovered your abuser had done this before? Comment below. Hit like if you think she deserves what's coming, and subscribe to see the trap unfold. Fire. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the old house settle around me. Down the hall, Trina slept peacefully in my guest room, probably dreaming about what she'd buy next with my money. My mind raced through possibilities, through plans and contingencies. The police investigation would take too long, and without concrete proof that I hadn't authorized the transfers, it might go nowhere. I needed something more, something that would trap her completely and guarantee I'd get every penny back. The next morning, I called my grandson Jareth. He was 32, worked in cybersecurity in Seattle, and had always been sharp as a tack. When I told him everything, carefully, quietly, from my locked bedroom while Trina was out grocery shopping, there was a long silence on the other end. Then his voice came back, tight with fury barely contained. "Grandma Cress, I'm coming up this weekend. Don't confront her, don't change anything. Just act normal. We're going to bury her." His certainty steadied something loose inside me. Jareth arrived Friday evening with his laptop bag and an anger in his eyes I'd never seen before. Trina was all charm and hospitality, offering him dinner and asking about his work with genuine seeming interest. He played along beautifully, laughing at her jokes, complimenting her cooking. But later, when she'd gone to bed, we sat in my bedroom and he showed me what he'd found. Trina had 3 previous identities, 5 previous elderly victims, and a pattern stretching back nearly a decade. She'd been bleeding old people dry and disappearing before anyone could build a case. "She's good," Jareth admitted, his fingers flying across his keyboard. "Really good. She knows exactly how to stay just barely on the legal side of things, getting access legitimately, making the transfers look authorized, then claiming the victim gave permission or was confused. But she made one mistake." He pulled up a screen full of code I didn't understand. She's been using the same cryptocurrency wallet to launder the money. I can trace every dollar she's stolen from you and probably from the others too. But we need her to incriminate herself clearly. We spent the weekend building our trap. Jareth installed hidden cameras throughout my house, tiny things no bigger than a button that fed to a secure cloud server. He set up audio recording software that activated with certain keywords. Most importantly, he helped me create a fake account at a different bank, one that appeared to hold another $100,000 in inheritance money I'd supposedly just received from a distant cousin. We made sure Trina would discover it accidentally, made sure it looked too tempting to resist. Monday morning, I left the new bank statement on my desk, partially hidden under some mail but visible enough for curious eyes. Then I told Trina I needed to visit my friend Naoma across town and would be gone most of the day. I drove to Naoma's house, explained everything, and we sat in her living room watching the camera feeds on Jareth's laptop. It took Trina less than 30 minutes to enter my bedroom. We watched her photograph the bank statement, watched her log into my computer using my passwords, watched her smile as she found the new account information. The trap was set. Ever planned the perfect revenge? Tell us in the comments. Like if you're Team Grandma, and subscribe. Over the next 2 weeks, I played the role of a lifetime. Every morning, I'd mention how grateful I was for that unexpected inheritance from cousin Maribel, how it meant I could finally take that trip to see my sister in Arizona, maybe even help my grandchildren more. Trina's eyes would light up with each mention, that calculated gleam I'd learned to recognize. She'd nod sympathetically, encourage my plans, ask probing questions about when the money would be accessible. I fed her exactly what she wanted to hear. Jareth had set everything up perfectly. The fake account looked completely legitimate, with a realistic balance and transaction history he'd manufactured. It was housed at a small regional bank he'd created a partnership with, one that had agreed to help catch Trina in exchange for information about her other victims. Every time she accessed my computer, which she did almost daily now, the cameras recorded her viewing the account details, taking screenshots, researching transfer procedures. We were building an airtight case, one transaction at a time. But Trina was being careful, more careful than with my retirement account. She was waiting, watching, making sure this wasn't a trap. I had to make her desperate enough to move quickly but confident enough to act. So I did something risky. I told her I was meeting with an estate attorney next week to set up a trust for my grandchildren. I watched her face as I explained that I wanted to protect the inheritance money, make sure it couldn't be touched by anyone but family. Her smile never wavered, but her fingers tightened on her coffee cup. That night, the cameras caught her making phone calls from my guest room. Jareth had tapped my home phone line legally with police approval once we'd shown them our evidence. We listened to Trina talking to someone named Lowell, discussing timelines and risk factors. She's setting up a trust next week, Trina hissed into the phone. If I don't move now, it'll be locked down. I need to do this fast. The voice on the other end argued with her, warned her to be patient. But greed was winning out over caution. 3 days later, I made my move. I told Trina I had a doctor's appointment in Billings, about 2 hours away, for some specialized testing. I'd be gone all day, maybe into the evening if the tests ran long. She offered to drive me, of course, but I insisted I wanted the independence, that Naoma was coming with me for support. Trina's relief was almost palpable. The moment my car pulled out of the driveway, Jareth confirmed she was moving. The cameras showed her rushing to my bedroom, logging into my computer, accessing the fake account. We watched from Naoma's house as Trina initiated a wire transfer for $95,000 to one of her hidden accounts. We watched her cover her tracks, clearing browser history and wiping down the keyboard. What she didn't know was that every keystroke was logged, every screen captured, every action documented in triplicate on Jareth's secure servers. The bank had been alerted and was playing along, making the transfer appear to process normally while actually flagging it for fraud. The trap had sprung shut, and Trina had no idea she was already caught. The moment of truth is coming. Drop a fire in the comments if you can't wait to see Trina's face. Like and subscribe. High voltage. I came home at sunset, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Trina greeted me at the door with her usual warm smile, asking about my tests, helping me with my coat like nothing had happened. I told her I was exhausted and needed to rest before dinner. She fussed over me, brought me tea, adjusted my pillows. Every touch made my skin crawl, but I smiled back, thanked her sweetly, and waited. Jareth was parked 2 blocks away with Detective Lorelei Vance, ready to move on my signal. The next morning, I told Trina I needed to check something on my computer. She went rigid for just a second, barely noticeable, but I saw it. I logged into the fake bank account while she stood behind me, pretending to dust the bookshelf. The balance showed $95,000 missing. I let out a gasp, genuine shock coloring my voice even though I'd known exactly what I'd find. Oh no. Oh no, no, no. My hands shook as I refreshed the screen. The money was definitely gone. Trina rushed over, all concern and sympathy. What's wrong? What happened? She was good, so convincing that if I hadn't known better, I might have believed she cared. I turned to her with tears streaming down my face, real tears, born from months of betrayal and rage finally breaking free. The money. Someone stole the inheritance money. It's gone, all of it. I watched her face carefully. She played her part perfectly, gasping in horror, grabbing my shoulders, demanding to know how this could happen. We need to call the bank immediately, she insisted, reaching for my phone. I let her dial, let her speak to the bank representative, let her perform outrage and concern. What she didn't know was that the person on the other end was working with the police, carefully recording every word. After she hung up, Trina sat beside me on the bed, holding my hand. Don't worry, she said softly. We'll figure this out. I'm here for you. I won't let anyone take advantage of you. The audacity nearly made me laugh. That afternoon, Detective Vance called. She asked if she could come by to discuss the theft, said the bank had flagged some suspicious activity. Trina's face went pale for just a moment before she recovered. Of course, I said loudly enough for her to hear. Please come right away. I'm so frightened. After I hung up, Trina suggested maybe she should give us privacy for the police interview, maybe she should run some errands. I insisted she stay. Your family, I said, squeezing her hand. I need you here. When Detective Vance arrived 30 minutes later with Jareth and 2 uniformed officers, Trina's confusion seemed genuine. We all sat in my living room, the detective asking questions about my computer security, who had access to my accounts, who knew about the inheritance. I answered carefully, watching Trina's face as the net tightened around her. Then Detective Vance turned to Trina directly. Ms. Holloway, where were you yesterday between 9 a.m. and 2 p.m.? Trina's confident smile finally faltered. The moment I'd been waiting for had finally arrived. Justice is coming. Comment gotcha if you're ready to see Trina crash. Smash that like button and subscribe. Detective Vance pulled out a tablet and set it on my coffee table. Ms. Holloway, I'm going to show you something, and I want you to understand that you have the right to remain silent. Trina's eyes darted to the door, then back to the detective, calculation spinning behind her gaze. She straightened her shoulders, composing herself. I don't understand what this is about, but of course I'll cooperate. I want to help Cress recover her money. Her voice was steady, but I saw her hands trembling slightly in her lap. The detective pressed play on the video. The screen showed my bedroom from the hidden camera's perspective, timestamp clearly visible, yesterday, 9:47 a.m. We all watched as Trina entered the room, looked around carefully, then sat at my computer. The video showed her logging in, accessing the fake bank account, and initiating the wire transfer. The audio caught her muttering to herself, "Stupid old woman, leaving all this money just sitting there. She'll never even notice until it's too late." The room fell completely silent except for Trina's recorded voice condemning her. Trina's face went from pale to gray to an almost greenish color. "That's not, I can explain," she started, but Detective Vance held up her hand. "There's more." Another video played, this one showing Trina photographing my original bank statements weeks ago. Then another, showing her installing the keylogging software on my computer. Then recordings of her phone calls to Lowell, discussing how to drain my accounts and disappear. Each piece of evidence landed like a hammer blow, and I watched Trina's carefully constructed facade crumble piece by piece. "You're under arrest for elder financial abuse, wire fraud, identity theft, and computer crimes," Detective Vance stated, her voice professionally cold. The uniformed officers moved forward with handcuffs. Trina lurched to her feet, backing away, her eyes wild now. "You can't prove I didn't have permission." "She's old, confused, she probably told me to do it and forgot." Her voice had lost all its warmth, replaced by something harsh and desperate. It was the real Trina, finally showing herself without the mask. Jareth stood up, holding his laptop. "Actually, we can prove it. I've traced every dollar you've stolen, not just from my grandmother, but from Oswin Davies, from Meredith Jung, from Lowell Casterline, from all 6 of your previous victims over the past decade. You've stolen over $1.7 million total. The cryptocurrency transactions, the shell companies, the fake identities, we have everything. And we've already frozen every account you control." Trina's face twisted with pure hatred, all pretense gone. She lunged toward me, and I actually flinched back. The officers caught her before she reached me, wrestling her toward the door as she screamed. "You ungrateful bitch. I took care of you. I could have left you to rot alone in this house. You owed me that money." Her voice echoed through my home, vicious and raw, as they dragged her out to the patrol car. I stood at my window and watched them put her in the back seat, her face contorted with rage pressed against the glass. 43 years of savings, she'd stolen. 9 months of my life, she'd corrupted. But I was still standing, and she was the one in handcuffs. Victory! Drop a party popper in the comments. Did you see that coming? Like if justice feels good, and subscribe to find out if she pays back every single penny. Money bag. The house felt strange after Trina was arrested. Emptier somehow, even though she'd only been poison disguised as companionship. I spent the first few days just wandering from room to room, touching things she touched, reclaiming my space. Jareth stayed with me that first week, sleeping in the guest room that still smelled faintly of Trina's perfume. We didn't talk much. Sometimes trauma needs silence to begin healing. I'd catch him watching me with worried eyes, but I wasn't fragile. I was angry, and anger is a much stronger foundation than fear. Detective Vance called on the 3rd day with updates. Trina's real name was Katrina Holloway Vance, no relation to the detective, unfortunately. She'd been working elder care scams since 2014, moving from state to state, changing her name slightly each time but keeping the same MO. The police had connected her to 8 victims total now, including 3 who'd died under suspicious circumstances. My blood ran cold at that. She'd killed people. I'd been sleeping down the hall from a murderer, letting her make my meals, trusting her with my medication. I could have been next. But the most shocking news came when Detective Vance told me about Lowell, the man Trina had been calling. He wasn't just a partner in crime. He was her husband, and he ran the entire operation. Trina would infiltrate the homes, gain trust, drain the accounts. Lowell would manage the money laundering, create the shell companies, arrange the fake identities. They'd been doing this together for over a decade, living well off stolen retirement funds while their victims struggled or died. The police had arrested him within hours of Trina's takedown, catching him trying to board a flight to Costa Rica. The legal process moved surprisingly fast once the evidence was presented. Jarrett's digital documentation was so thorough, so irrefutable, that Trina's public defender advised her to take a plea deal. She refused initially, still convinced she could talk her way out somehow. But when the prosecutor added murder charges related to Oswin Davies and another victim named Calla Brennan, both of whom had died shortly after Trina drained their accounts, both showing traces of medication tampering, she finally broke. 25 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for 15. Lowell got 30 years. The evidence against him was even more damning because he'd kept meticulous records of every victim, every dollar stolen. The prosecutor said he'd probably been planning to write a book about it someday, convinced he was clever enough never to be caught. His arrogance became his downfall. Those records helped the FBI recover assets from victims going back to 2013, money hidden in offshore accounts and investments that Lowell had thought were untouchable. It wasn't everything, but it was something. As for my money, the recovery process was complicated. The initial $253,000 Trina had stolen from my retirement account was frozen in her various accounts, but getting it back required court orders, asset seizures, and endless paperwork. The prosecutor assured me I'd be first in line for restitution since my case had broken the whole operation open, but it could take 6 months to a year. I was 76 years old. I didn't have a year to wait. That's when I came up with my final plan, the one that would ensure Trina paid back every penny immediately, with interest. She got 25 years. But will Grandma get her money back? Comment your predictions. Like this video and subscribe to see the final power move. I hired a lawyer, a sharp young woman named Naoma Casterline who specialized in elder abuse cases. She listened to my situation and smiled, a predator's smile that reminded me of Trina, except this time the predator was on my side. "We're going to do something aggressive," she said. "We're going to sue Trina and Lowell civilly while the criminal case proceeds. We'll freeze every asset they have, go after their families if they helped hide money, put liens on everything they've ever touched. We'll make it impossible for them to exist financially until you're paid back in full." The civil suit was filed within 2 weeks. Naoma was ruthless, presenting evidence of emotional distress, breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, and intentional infliction of harm. She argued that Trina had specifically targeted me because of my age and vulnerability, that she'd planned the theft methodically over months while pretending to care for me. The judge, a woman in her 60s who'd apparently dealt with her own mother's financial abuse, was visibly angry as she reviewed our evidence. She granted our motion to freeze all Holloway assets immediately pending trial. But the real masterstroke came when Jarrett discovered something during his deep dive into Lowell's finances, a life insurance policy worth $800,000 that Lowell had taken out on himself, with Trina as the beneficiary. Naoma immediately filed to have my claim attached to that policy as a creditor. If anything happened to Lowell in prison, or when he eventually died, I'd be paid from that policy before Trina saw a cent. More importantly, the policy had a cash surrender value of about $270,000, almost exactly what Trina had stolen from me. Trina fought it from prison, of course. She filed motion after motion, claiming she had no assets, that everything had been spent or lost, that she was judgment-proof. But Naoma had found the money Lowell had hidden in cryptocurrency and offshore accounts. She'd found the properties they'd bought under shell company names in Oregon and Idaho. She'd found jewelry, art, even a boat they'd registered under a fake business. Asset by asset, we claimed it all, liquidating everything and putting it into an escrow account designated for victim restitution. 3 months after Trina's arrest, I sat in a courtroom for the civil judgment hearing. Trina was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit, her platinum hair grown out to show dark roots, her face harder and older without makeup. She wouldn't look at me directly, but I felt her hatred like heat from a fire. The judge awarded me $253,000 in direct restitution for the stolen funds, plus another $87,000 in damages, legal fees, and emotional distress. With interest and penalties, the total came to $362,000. Every penny, and then some. The best part came when the judge ordered the insurance policy's cash value seized immediately and paid directly to me. Trina's face went purple with rage. She lunged across the defense table, screaming obscenities, promising she'd find me when she got out, that I'd pay for this. The bailiffs wrestled her down as she shrieked like an animal. I sat there calmly, hands folded in my lap, and watched her lose control completely. After 76 years of life, I'd learned that the best revenge isn't getting angry. It's staying calm while your enemy destroys themselves. Justice, I realized, was even sweeter than I'd imagined. Speech balloon $362,000. Drop a money bag below. Smash like if you're celebrating with grandma, and subscribe, and you won't believe the twist. Confetti ball. The money hit my account on a Wednesday morning in September, 6 months to the day after I'd first discovered the theft. I logged into my online banking, using Jarrett's security system now, with facial recognition and two-factor authentication, and just stared at the balance. $362,000. More than I'd lost. More than I'd saved in 41 years. I sat at my kitchen table and cried, not from sadness but from relief so profound it felt like physical weight lifting off my chest. I could breathe again. I could live again. But the story didn't end with me getting my money back. Within weeks of our successful civil suit, I started getting calls from the other victims' families. The daughter of Oswin Davies called first, asking if my lawyer Naoma would take her case. Then Calla Brennan's son. Then the nephew of Meredith Zhang. One by one, the families of everyone Trina and Lowell had destroyed reached out, hoping for the same justice I'd achieved. Naoma agreed to take all the cases, and I agreed to help however I could, testifying about my experience, sharing Jarrett's investigative methods. The civil suits became a wave, a movement. News outlets picked up the story, grandmother's clever trap brings down elder abuse ring. I did interviews, uncomfortable at first with the attention but determined to warn others about caregivers like Trina. The response was overwhelming. I received hundreds of letters from elderly people who'd experienced similar abuse but had been too ashamed to report it, or too scared they wouldn't be believed. Each letter broke my heart and hardened my resolve. This couldn't keep happening. There had to be systemic change. I used $50,000 of my restitution to establish a foundation, the Cress Davies Elder Protection Fund, named for me and Oswin, Trina's first suspected murder victim. The foundation provided free legal services to elderly victims of financial abuse, funded background check services for families hiring caregivers, and lobbied for stronger laws protecting seniors. Jarrett quit his corporate job to run it full-time, channeling his anger about what happened to me into something constructive. Within a year, we'd helped recover over $2 million for abuse victims across 6 states. Detective Vance became an ally, using our case as a training example for law enforcement on how to investigate elder financial crimes. She pushed for mandatory reporting laws, for banks to flag unusual account activity involving seniors, for caregiver agencies to implement stricter vetting. Some of it passed, some didn't, but the conversation was happening. People were paying attention. Trina had tried to make me a victim, a cautionary tale about naive old women who trusted the wrong people. Instead, I'd become something she never expected, a fighter, an advocate, and a warning to anyone who preyed on the vulnerable. The other families started winning their cases too. Oswin's daughter recovered $190,000. Calla's son got $140,000. One by one, Trina and Lowell's hidden assets were divided among their victims, their carefully constructed empire dismantled and redistributed. Every cent they'd stolen, returned. Every life they'd damaged, acknowledged. It wasn't enough, nothing could truly compensate for the trauma, for the victims who died, but it was something. It was accountability. And in a world where elder abuse so often went unpunished, that felt like revolution. Speech balloon from victim to hero. Comment how this inspires you. Like if you believe in second chances and new beginnings. Subscribe for where everything comes full circle. Glowing star. 2 years after Trina's arrest, I stood in the visiting room of the federal women's prison in Wyoming. She sat across from me in her orange jumpsuit, her platinum hair now completely dark, her face gaunt and aged beyond her 47 years. She asked to see me through her lawyer, claimed she wanted to apologize, to seek forgiveness. Naoma had advised against coming, but I needed to see her one last time. Not for closure, exactly, but to understand what kind of person could do what she'd done. We sat in silence for a long moment, separated by a metal table bolted to the floor. Trina wouldn't meet my eyes. When she finally spoke, her voice was small, nothing like the confident woman who'd invaded my home. "I was taught this," she said quietly. "My mother ran scams on old people. My grandmother before her. It's all I've ever known. Lowell's family too, 3 generations of con artists. We thought we were smarter than everyone, that marks like you deserved it for being naive." She looked up then, and I saw something broken in her eyes. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she continued. "I know what I did was unforgivable. I destroyed lives. I probably killed people, Oswin, Kala, maybe others. I'll die in here, and I probably deserve worse. But I need you to know that what you did, fighting back, building that foundation, helping the others, it broke the cycle. My daughter was learning the business. She was 16, and Lowell was training her to be the next generation. When we got arrested, she went to live with her aunt, a normal person. She's in college now, studying social work. She's going to help people instead of hurt them." I sat with that information, surprised by the sting of tears in my eyes. I'd been so focused on justice, on recovery, on punishment, that I hadn't considered there might be secondary victims, children raised in this poisonous legacy. "Thank you for telling me," I said finally. "I'm glad she got out." Trina nodded, a tear sliding down her cheek. "I named her Cress, actually. After my grandmother. But maybe she'll grow up to be more like you than like us. Maybe that's my penance, knowing she'll undo some of the damage we caused." We didn't speak much after that. There wasn't really anything else to say. I left the prison feeling strange, not forgiveness exactly, but something like understanding. Trina was a monster, yes, but monsters are made, not born. That didn't excuse what she'd done, didn't absolve her of responsibility, but it gave me a kind of peace I hadn't expected. I'd taken back my power, my money, my life. And somehow, in the process, I'd helped break a cycle of abuse that had spanned generations. That felt like more than justice. It felt like redemption. That evening, I sat on my front porch watching the Montana sunset paint the sky orange and gold. The foundation had just helped recover funds for its 100th victim. Jareth was inside making dinner, his girlfriend Maribel laughing at something he said in the kitchen. My house was full of life again, full of real love instead of manipulative performance. I thought about the journey from that terrible Thursday morning in the bank to this peaceful evening, about everything I'd lost and everything I'd gained. I was 78 now, and I'd lived through worse than Trina Holloway. The truth was simple, she'd stolen my life savings, but she hadn't stolen my life. She'd taken my money, but I'd taken my power back. And in the end, I'd made her pay back every penny, with interest, with consequences, and with a legacy that would protect others long after I was gone. I sipped my tea and smiled at the setting sun. Some people spend their whole lives looking for purpose. I'd found mine at 76, in the ashes of betrayal, and it had made me stronger than I'd ever been before. That was a gift Trina never intended to give me, but I'd claimed it anyway. And that, more than any dollar amount, was the sweetest victory of all. What an incredible journey! Comment below, what lesson hit you hardest from Grandma Cress's story? Backhand index pointing down if this story moved you, smash that like button. Sparkling heart subscribe and turn on notifications, we share real stories of survival, justice, and triumph every week. Share this with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to fight back. Bell sparkles.